Full disclaimer, this video was created on a phone screen. What you're seeing is recording through a phone, so the video quality may be bad for some of you viewers. This is a space mission launch, so I hope you enjoy this video. And the reason why I couldn't just put text on there is because some difficulties. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the video.
So hard, and so many people are coming together to make this happen. And we're watching. You have to be there with them.
Stage 1 takes, pressing for flight.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
0. Ignition. Falcon 9, ignition, Dragon. Go, NASA. Go, SpaceX. Godspeed, bottom dog.
Godspeed indeed.
Same timing for what our eyes us?
No, they're a couple hours ahead.
Emotional moment for you right now, Katie.
Stage
Watching.
1 propulsion is nominal.
Wow. Oh, that's so cool. We're watching it live now.
Yeah,
It's
it's happening right now. Can you imagine how loud that is?
I know.
People on the ground will hear that.
What happened?
Aliens took over the feed. I'm kidding.
M1D thrown down.
Maybe they had to switch cameras. Just think there's people strapped to the top of that rocket.
I know.
Just before they left, let's light that candle because you see that big, beautiful rocket, clear blue skies, and just headed straight on its mission. M1D throttle up.
Hope triumphs over fear in a time where our country needs it.
Oh, that is so
Needs to be
cool.
reminded of that.
Mm-hmm.
And down on the ground, they can actually feel. You can physically feel that crumpling that we hear. You can physically feel that.
I can't.
Our Geo Benitez is at the Kennedy Space Center right now. Behind him is where the rocket just took off from. And Geo, what are your thoughts? I mean, you were right there. You could feel it. You could hear it. Walk us through. I'm back in it, Joe.
Well, I just have to tell you, I'm emotional right now because this is such a moment. And to feel, what Katie was talking about, feeling that moment, feeling that go up into the air, and you can still sort of feel it. Extraordinary human achievement right here. And sorry for getting emotional, but it's my first launch, so there's that.
Hey, Christina, now that it's your first launch, what are your thoughts as you're watching this historic moment?
I just couldn't be more thrilled. I'm thinking about how Bob and Doug feel in there and how excited they are. You know, every moment of the day was mostly the same as what they've experienced in their training sims until
Here it
the
is.
off, and you know you're going up. And at this point, they've been going up for so long, they know they're not stopping until they're in space. And that is just an incredible feeling. It's a new era where space travel isn't just limited to sovereign countries and governments. It's something that's going to be accessible.
We can
for
see
all.
from
It's
the
gonna be an
camera.
innovative thing.
Fast
We
they're
just
going.
open it up, and I can't wait to see what we do with it.
6,700 miles per. That's kilometers per
There's
hour.
first stage step.
Oh, look, it just separated. The rocket separated.
Ignition.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Katie, talk to us about what we're just watching right here. We know this is a sort of a critical moment.
Since the first stage dropping away upon maintenance and cutoff.
That's the main
Explain to
fuel
us exactly
tank.
what's
So
happening.
basically, the first
To
stage
get the
was
rocket
drained
out of
into
the
the
atmosphere.
gas, and now we're kicking it off.
So
It's
now that
actually
they're in
fly itself
space,
back
they
down
don't need
to
that
recovery
much
ship. It goes
propulsion.
up for another long time.
So
and
the
then
bottom
comes back
part
down. We'll
of
see
the
what happens
rocket
in the next
falls
few minutes.
off.
And that was a major part
That
of
was
the
just to get
SpaceX's
out of the
program, the reusable
atmosphere.
rockets to make
Now
this,
they're
I
just
don't want to say
using the
affordable, but to make it cost effective.
the,
Exactly, to be able to reuse them again.
capsule
Actually, what they
rockets to
learn
get them where they're
and
going.
understand how to make them fly back.
But what if those
It's been
run out of
immense.
fuel?
And Elon Musk
Yeah,
referred
then
to that
they're
as part of the holy grail
I
of
know.
spaceflight, essentially saying, why would you throw away a
Look, it looks like
747
something is
every
climbing
time,
on the
that
rocket.
you used it? Give us a sense of what happens now.
Just
It
now,
will
it
not
looked
be
like
until
something was-
tomorrow. Is that in the morning or the afternoon when it's
It looked
expected
like
to dock
something
with the
was
International
walking
Space
across
Station?
the
So this is
rocket.
the Dragon itself.
Aliens
It's
are
still
real.
powering up into
What
space.
if
So
caught
it's
an
still on
alien
its on the
live
second
camera?
stage engine right now. Novel, you got your end here. And so, and what does that mean, what we're hearing right now? They're saying when the next report site is. Like, so all the way up from North Carolina, basically Nova Scotia, over to Ireland, there are abort points. They are designated points that if something goes wrong, that will be the place, and there are, I think,
The Dragon capsule can come off.
exactly.
And that particular abort that's available here actually made this less risky than the initial NASA space shuttle flights.
I don't know about the numbers, but it's really.
We can actually see the Earth's atmosphere.
To have this kind of abort capability.
See that white glow
I know.
on the edge of the Earth?
I know. That's the whole atmosphere.
That's the ozone.
And
Did it
from
just get
the
bigger?
time where they flew,
What,
from that
the
time, that
rocket?
capsule can be pulled off of the
Like
rocket
when it
and land in the water. And now it's just a question of if that should happen where.
Christina, talk to me about what Bob and Doug are doing right now
Look how
inside the
hot
capsule.
that
We can see them
rocket
there on the
is.
left hand of the screen.
Uh-huh.
What are they reviewing and what are they doing at this moment?
At this moment, it's really just all about the rocket, so they are probably reviewing some of the pressures and different signals that they're getting in telemetry from the rocket itself. Like Katie said, they are on the second stage, so they're going to continue to be propelled into space up until 8 or so minutes into the total flight. So they're monitoring, but monitoring isn't as simple as just looking at a couple gauges. You know, everything is vibrating, they're having a lot of G-forces on them, so even just monitoring the systems and listening to the communications is a big job as test pilots that they're doing.
You know, I'm going to ask our director, Dave DeCinti, if he can, by any chance, go back to the initial
6,000
liftoff
miles per
when
hour.
the rocket took off when it was a go. And I want to bring him back up, Colonel Steve Ganyard. Steve, your friend is Doug Hurley. He's in that capsule right now. He is headed for the cosmos. I understand when you saw
They're
the
going
rocket take off. It was a
16,000
pretty emotional
miles
moment for you
per
as well.
hour.
It was.
Wow.
You know, like Gio, it's hard not to be overwhelmed by this legislation, the number of people that came together to make this happen, and for the U.S. to be going back to space, and to think about this in the broader context of what it means for humankind to be able to go out and truly colonize, to bring in this golden age of space exploration that these guys are laying the foundation for.
And your friend Doug Hurley, I mean, he is an astronaut. Like the other astronauts we have join us on this broadcast. He is somebody who's dedicated his life to this, and it is not an easy life. It is
A great ride to space. All I'd like to do out of you guys and the rest of the team, thank you so much for what you've done for us today, putting America back into low Earth orbit from the Florida coast. Good luck and Godspeed.
Godspeed. So next, they're going to stay for a minimum of 1 month, a maximum of just over 100 days. Give us a sense of what the mission is now.
Right now, they're getting ready for the rendezvous. So tomorrow is when they dock. They tell people 8.5 minutes to get to space and about a day and a half or so to parallel park, right? So they're going to approach the space station, and before they do that, or while they're doing that, we're actually really. I mean, this is still a test mission. Every single minute of it is a test mission, and they've got some, well thought out tests to understand: does this vehicle behave like we thought it would? Can everybody have the right information at the right time? And does everything look good for docking? So there's a lot to do between now and tomorrow morning when they will actually dock with the space station. And it's kind of like a ballet up in space. They'll be sort of like catching up with the space station. They're in orbit a little lower than the space station, and so they go around a little faster, and then they will actually do a burn to catch up with the station. And that ballet happens over the next 19 hours.
Christina, talk to us about Doug and Bob right now inside of that capsule. Are they navigating the capsule, or essentially is it on autopilot, being controlled, and they're sort of worried about everything else?
It should be on autopilot. One thing about the SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule is that it could be completely automated throughout the mission, including rendezvous and docking. And it is the first of its kind to actually do that. Now, they do have the ability to take over manually, and because this is a test mission, they're actually going to practice that ability and test it out both near and far from the International Space Station. So they're not necessarily driving, but they're paying very close attention to how those automated systems systems are responding. As you can imagine, when it just pops off of the end of the rocket, there's no guaranteed orientation or attitude. It has to use all of its systems to figure out where it is in space, how it's oriented in space, and make sure that it's, belly down and nose forward going around the Earth. And so Bob and Doug are making sure that all those systems are working great.
Wait, what's going on with the camera feed?
Anything doesn't go as expected, and hopefully they're just watching all those systems come online nominally, even including the life support systems. They're in a closed loop life support system situation right now. Everything just went through a lot of vibrations on launch, so hopefully they're just watching everything come up nominally.
We actually also have that moment we spoke about earlier, the reusable rocket that we heard you mention. It landed back on a ship at sea, and we have the video. We want to show that to you now because this was one of the sort of the selling points for NASA and SpaceX. They promised they could do this. It took them a while, but they figured it out. And I think we do have that clip if Dave DeCinti can show it to us now. This was just the moment right after it landed back on that ship, and you can still see some of the thrusters there as we see some of the smoke come off the bottom of the rocket. But an incredible moment, an incredible technology. And Katie, as you watch this, does SpaceX impress you more and more as you've sort of seen their journey from once they got into the space race and what we've seen today?
Absolutely. I mean, I love that they bring things that are new ways of thinking, new ways of doing, and, they and the NASA team have figured out a way to work on this together, which, takes, I think, being brave enough to say, this is what we see, this is what we can do, and NASA going, well, that is a different way, and vice versa. And so it's a pretty cool partnership, and yet it actually paves the way for other partnerships as well.
And Steve Ganyard, wanted to bring you back in just to get a sense of what that partnership means. And was it necessary, in your opinion, for spaceflight to reinvent itself for the 21st century?
Yeah, I think if Elon Musk were with us right now, he would tell you that SpaceX has stood on the shoulders of NASA. And to Katie's point previously, this is a public-private partnership. So you're taking the best of government and the best of the private sector, and together, that's the triumph here today. This is the triumph that's going to drive the cost, increase the safety, reliable launch to orbit, that's going to allow us to put colonies on other planets. So to do that, we require the best from the private sector, the best from the government, and that's how we got to this launch today, and that's what the future will be.
And give us a sense just again of why NASA is no longer launching astronauts itself. I mean, why involve private funds?
Yeah, government. If we look at the COVID response, right, not great. So if we leave things exclusively to government, they aren't as agile. If you go to the private sector, they're faster, quicker, better, cheaper. But you need government in something like this, where big science, very expensive big science is involved. And so this partnership between NASA and SpaceX, and in the future, there's lots of other companies that are involved here. It's not just SpaceX. We have Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin coming along here. He's nipping at the heels of Elon Musk. And Jeff Bezos is spending $1 billion with a B of his own money to get to the moon. And you have these competing visions where Elon Musk wants to go and put a colony on Mars, and Jeff Bezos wants a colony on the moon. And so you have these two entrepreneurs, the richest guy in the world and the 31st richest guy in the world, who are putting their own money down to secure a personal legacy, to secure a personal dream that most of the rest of the world shares, and that is to get to space and create colonies and explore new worlds and advance science.
Rewatching that launch, it just does not get old. But Katie, you wanted to comment.
Well, I think with all these companies and the partnerships with government, government has the public trust. We are the shepherds of the taxpayers' dollars. And then you have these innovative companies who can actually take bigger risks, not with people, but with hardware. And by them being able to say, well, let's try it this way, something that would be a little bit harder for the less flexible bureaucracy of the U.S. To do. By doing that, they actually go several steps ahead, and it brings everybody with them. And that's the general principle that we're using to basically get
Right now,
to Mars faster.
how has the marriage been, though? Because you do really have sort of two very different spouses in NASA and Elon Musk. Yeah, right? Yeah. How has this marriage worked, and what is the real story? Results matter. There are results right now. We're watching them up close. But how has that been? Because you have the rebel billionaire and you have the by-the-book agency.
Well, I like to look at even what we've seen in the press conferences, the way these people talk to each other. You can tell that they have figured themselves out. That they have figured out how to forge relationships. And part of it is, I think, that the mission is the same. The mission is to explore and to go further and to build the hardware and make sure that basically, a diverse bunch of people can get to go and not just a few. And I think when they focus on that, I see the bridges in between individual disciplines, and even, we're watching movies together during the quarantine. They had the flight control team, SpaceX and NASA were watching. I call them boy movies. I think there's a show, Bob and Doug McKenzie. I think that was a favorite.
Christina, I'm curious if we can just kind of piggyback on that. Your thoughts on space tourism and the idea of should space just be open for people who have experience or come one and all?
So they're going to continue under the power of this.
I am definitely in the come one and all camp, and I think that that's the prevailing theory right now. NASA's job was to incubate this until it was ready for release into the private sector, until it was commercially viable, and that's when it's better to hand it off to companies like SpaceX so that NASA can set its sights on parts of this that may not quite yet be commercially viable to get them to those points. That's things like going back to them this decade and eventually on to Mars. So I say anyone who's curious, anyone who has a desire to dream, to carry humanity's dreams with them into space and to share it when they get back, to contribute to the science on the frontiers, I welcome them, and that's why this era that we're starting today is so exciting.
And Katie, we talked about that they won't actually attach to the International Space Station until tomorrow. How long is this portion of the flight?
This portion, meaning until they get to the space station?
Right.
It's, I think 19 hours
Okay.
is the total. And so they're going to actually get a chance once they're doing a lot of things right now, checking out things. As Christina was saying, there's a lot of shaking that goes on. You want to make sure everything's still in good shape. But after they're done with a bunch of tests, they'll probably take their suits off. They've got food up there. There's enough room to move around. Eventually, the astronauts will go to bed.
So you will sleep. So, Tom actually brought this up about is this kind of riding itself at a certain point on autopilot, but they'll both go to sleep at the same time, or it's one person is always
Someone's on watch.
Well, as I understand it, the plan is to sleep at the same time. There's a time when it says you'll sleep, and actually being ready for that critical, I'm being funny about it, but being ready for that critical operation of docking is imperative. And they've had a long day, and so when sleep's your job, that's what you'll do. And at the same time, they've got alarms inside the vehicle there. I'm sure they're going to be watching, but the ground is watching them as well.
Christina, I know you set the record for the longest time in the space station by a woman, nearly a year. Incredible. And one of the research projects you worked on was what sort of being in space that long does to the human body. What did you figure out? What did you learn? And why on this mission with Doug and Bob is there sort of a sliding scale? It could be a few months or it could be 110 days. Explain that.
Sure. Well, some of the things that we're looking to find out is what is normal for the human body after up to a year in space, and hopefully longer eventually as we're going to look into architectures for Mars missions. But I think what we find is what things sort of plateau in terms of your physiological changes, and what things maybe keep getting different and keep adapting that we have to maybe watch and come up with new countermeasures for. Our exercise program is excellent, so we keep that cardiovascular and muscular health going, but there are always new things to learn when we extend those missions. For Bob and Doug, I think there are a couple different factors that affect when they can come home. One is the readiness of the next vehicle. It's obviously still going through some of its final, phases of its construction and delivery, so we'll see how that pans out. Obviously, right now the goal is late August, I believe. And then also things like, are the solar arrays going to perform better or worse than expected? That could change its maximum possible duration. There's operational requirements and constraints. Are they going to do some spacewalks, get some new batteries installed, and then simply weather,
And Katie, I wanted to bring back the point that Doug and Bob are both dads, and you had a 10-year-old son, and who's now 19, but you were still able to communicate with him every night. Give us a sense of the regimen and how you're able to stay in contact with home.
With the same kind of way we can actually see the astronauts right now and talk to them, we can actually call our families for, at least 40 minutes of every hour if we wanted to, if you could, all day long, which nobody has time for that. But I spoke to my family every day except for 3 in almost 6 months. And so we get to talk to them. We used to have video conferences once a month, once a week. It might be a little bit better than that. But you find ways to be in touch and be together. My son and I used to read stories.
I think we have some video. You brought your flute up with you into space. And in a moment, we're gonna play that. There we go. The first ever duet from space and on the ground. Tell us about this moment.
This is with Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull, and I loved the fact that he brought the flute to rock music, and he sort of brought a whole bunch of people with him, including me. And so I wrote to him and just said, I'm going to go to the space station on a little business trip, and I wonder if I can take your flute with me. On the day the first day, on the day of this duet, he was in Perm, Russia, playing a concert. It was the April 12th, 2011, the 50th anniversary of human spaceflight. He was in Russia. I was living on the space station, and we played this duet together.
Well, it's definitely different, but nonetheless, incredibly cool. And I gotta think, even though you have a whole nation behind you and rooting you on in space, at moments it has to get so lonely, and you do have to cut loose and whip out the jazz flute and just go wild, right? I mean, after you're up there for so long.
Well, the big secret is that people feel badly for us, and they have these images of capsule, but that space station is like 10 school buses without the seats in them, all connected together at different angles. I mean, it's huge and giant. It's filled with science experiments that can't be done down here, and it's the most amazing place to live. I would have stayed another 6 months in a minute.
I'd like to bring Gio Benitez back in. And Gio, it's quite a different scene than it would be outside of a pandemic. Certainly you would have many people who are watching. Give us a sense of what you are observing there from on the ground, and if you're able to kind of give us a read on the energy there.
People were just so excited, Lindsay, just so excited. They've cleared out, but this whole lawn here was packed with people as people were just watching this launch. And by the way, I gotta just say, Katie and Christina, they're incredibly modest, but you know how they tell us, oh, you should know a little bit about everything? Well, astronauts need to know a lot about everything. They are just the smartest people that I've interviewed so far, because they go in with some expertise, and then they have to know a little bit about everything, including how to do their own surgery. Because they're obviously alone there on that ship, on that International Space Station. By the way, I should tell you that tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, that is when they are expected to dock at the ISS, and at 12:45 p.m. Eastern, that is when they're going to do that hatch opening into the International Space Station, and that's where they have the welcome ceremony.
Well, Gio, could you sense the pressure from speaking with so many NASA staffers and being in those news conferences? Could you sense the pressure that, all eyes were on this launch? It had to be a successful mission for a variety of reasons, of course, because we had 2 Americans aboard the capsule, but also just to push forward the space program in America, because there are some very ambitious projects down the road.
Incredibly ambitious projects. We are talking about, I spoke with the NASA administrator, and he said that one of the projects he's most excited about is the idea of 3D printing organs. Can you imagine what that would mean for healthcare? That is something that you could do in the microgravity of space that you can't necessarily do here on Earth. So no doubt about it, they wanted this to succeed, and they wanted to make sure, though, that Bob and Doug were both safe as they did it.
And curious if you're aware of this story, Katie, you probably are. I guess there was an American flag that flew on the first ever space shuttle. Tell us about that, because now it sounds like there was a race rally. Who was going to bring it back? Was it going to be SpaceX?
Exactly. So on the last shuttle flight, that flag actually went up to the space station and was Doug and his commander, Chris Ferguson, who is the commander of the Boeing launch that will be coming soon, right? And so here's the commander and pilot vying for whose spacecraft, commercial partner spacecraft, will be up there first to then retrieve that flag and bring it back home.
SpaceX.
So I guess that, you don't like to say it's done till it's done, but it's looking pretty good for SpaceX.
I want to ask Christina, we're talking about docking with the International Space Station aboard a private rocket ship and a private spaceship. How much harder now is the next step, is getting back to the moon on a privately owned and operated ship?